Hello, everyone. Welcome to Team Engagement Live for today. I'm so glad you can join us. Usually people trickle in, so I'll just do our intros to start with before we get going. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. I am Noelle Smit. I am the CEO and co-founder of Teamgage. If you haven't come across Teamgage before, we are the only engagement tool specifically for teams, and we help teams continuously improve the way they work together. Today's guest joining me in person, which I haven't had before, I'm really thrilled to introduce you all to Ben Smit. So Ben is co-founder of Teamgage with me. He's also my husband. I think most people do know that, but that's why it was really easy for us to be in person together. And I think Ben realizes what an honor it is that I invited him to be on my show. But welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for you to have me, I'm sure.
So normally I would read out other people's bios, read out the guest bios, and it feels a little weird to do that for Ben, but I think I'll sort of run through it quite quickly. But yeah, obviously co-founder of Teamgage. You've spent a career over 15 years, a bit more than 15, showing your age, working in technology and scaling companies. He's really skilled at leveraging technology to solve human problems, with a focus on motivating team members to own and advocate for the improvement process. So you've got some pretty good creds. You've worked with some pretty big global companies, local governments, universities, and you've helped over 30,000 teams. He's also won a number of awards. So you are a member of the In Daily 40 Under 40 with me.
With you, of course, yes.
But then you are also a recipient of the Industry Leaders Fund, which I don't have. So well done, good work. And that's going to see you attending Harvard Uni soon.
Yes, hopefully next year. That'll be exciting.
So we will jump in. We only have 20 minutes, it flies by, but I want to just jump straight into it. At Teamgage, we talk a lot and we really pride ourselves on living our values. Someone said it's not a competition, but if you know me, I'm very competitive and it's very hard for me.
That's literally incorrect.
Everything is a competition. But yeah, we really pride ourselves on living our values and not just having them, as I think Colin D'Ellis said, laminated on the wall. Yeah. So maybe take us through that. How do we make sure our values are lived?
Yeah, it's such a challenge, I think, particularly for larger orgs to get this right, where it feels almost awkward, particularly if you're trying to implement a set of values, if you didn't have them from day one, to make them a real part of who you are. But I think there's lots of different things you can try, and there's no one size fits all. But for us, it's really around our core values are our decision-making filters, right? We shouldn't be afraid to lean on them pretty heavily. And if you find that you're not leaning on your core values, it's probably a good, reflective moment to be like, actually, are these our core values? There's been plenty of royal commissions about companies who say one thing and do another. And that's really the litmus test is, do we recite these when we're making our decisions to go, yes, this is aligned with our values, or no, it's not. Standard things for us, obviously, we talk about them in daily stand-up. It's a part of our routine. It's a part of the way we praise people as well, and highlighting values lived.
So you just brushed over, we talk about them in our daily stand-up, but for people that aren't part of that ritual for us, what exactly do we do? How do we talk about them every day?
So look, for every single team member, we'll get into daily stand-up each day and recognize a value that was lived yesterday. Preferably by someone else, right? I mean, highlighting your own achievements is fine, nothing wrong with that. But that the team is working together effectively when you can look at somebody else and go, "Hey, I saw you living that value yesterday, and I wanted to call that out." So that's definitely a big part of our process.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful because it means everyone's always thinking about the values at the start of every day, and think about, what did my team do yesterday and where can I recognize a colleague? So I think it's a really nice thing for embedding the values and keeping them front of mind every day. And also it's a really nice way to recognize your colleagues, that recognition piece, which, I honestly don't think most companies give anywhere near enough recognition of people. And I think that's a really nice way that we get to acknowledge the work people are putting in every day.
Well, it's also peer-to-peer, right? Like yes, top down's great, but having teammates recognize other teammates and having those opportunities to do it by default. So it's not hard work, it's just there. And then I think the other one is recruitment, right? Like you're looking for the people that align to those core values. And that's where the rubber hits the road. When you've got a good candidate in front of you who's not a values fit and you don't have anyone else, right? Everyone knows how hard it's been to recruit over the last 12 months. And you're always tempted. It's like, I think this person could do they have the skills, they're not values aligned, but does that really matter right now? We really need someone. And that's where whether the values are important to you or not. Because if you say, no, not the right person for us, hopefully they'll be the right person somewhere else. But for us, we need this.
Yeah.
That's another sign that you actually are living your values.
Yeah. And I think when you talk to leaders over and over again, you hear that they never regret not hiring someone when they were worried about that culture fit.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, typically regret hiring someone purely for skills and experience without considering the culture fit. And I will say as well, culture fit, when we use that term, we are talking about aligned to our purpose and values, not anything
people
else.
Like us. That doesn't need to be, a part of it. It's really about when the team goes and works on something together, they're going to be aligned on those greater core beliefs that get them to the end together, as opposed to splintering off and having different priorities of what's important to the mission.
Yeah. And what about performance appraisals? It is weird asking you these questions when I know the answers, but let's go with it. So, we put values into our performance appraisals. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, I looked at, again, it's just, every opportunity to embed this stuff. So when we talk to someone about, how'd your quarter go, we really need the context of like, how did it go in terms of who we are and what we do and what's important to us. So, that forms a part of it, being able to self-reflect and go, okay, well, against these values, these are the actions that I took.
Yeah.
And to be reflective of, if I can't think of an example in a 90-day period, which is a really long period of time, then am I still living it?
Yeah.
Am I going through the motions on this, or is it still important to me? So
yeah,
it's just an opportunity to actually reflect on it again.
Yeah. All right. I should say as well, if you have any questions as we go, or there's something you'd like us to answer, feel free to throw it in the chat or the Q&A. We'll be keeping an eye on that. So we talk a lot about engaged teams over and above engaged employees.
Yep.
That's a sort of a phrase we use internally. And I'd love you to talk us through that, because obviously employee engagement, that individual engaged, is a very mature piece in our world. Everyone, I think, knows what we're talking about when we say an engaged employee. People know the process around engagement surveys to assess individual engagement. So what are we talking about when we say engaged teams over engaged employees?
Yeah, and I think we use that phrase a lot, right? Something over something, and it's probably worth just understanding what we mean by that. When we say over, we don't mean that the other thing isn't important, right? Like, engaged employees are important, but what we're saying is that a group of engaged individuals does not automatically create an engaged team. And we know the multiplier effect of an engaged team is so much higher than a group of engaged individuals. That's really what we're talking about. So, an engaged team is working collectively towards a goal, and that's where the power comes, right? One of the courses that we do in the Teamgage Academy talks about the importance of interconnections, right? If you've got 3 people, you have 3 links, but as soon as you add one more person to that and one more person again, the number of links grows exponentially. So I can't remember the exact numbers now, but it grows to like 190 links within just a handful of people. So that then becomes really important about the team sort of rowing in the same direction, if I can use that analogy, where that's going to get you your outcome. If you think that the sporting analogy as well, if you've got if you played any team sport, you'll know this. There's that sort of high achieving individual. I've played with a couple over my career, and it's frustrating because they're highly engaged in the game, but they're not doing what the team needs to succeed. And that's really, true of teams at work as well, right? You can have individual superstars, and I'm not even saying that there's, malicious intent in them not working together. They may just not realize it or may not be aligned on what's important. So yeah, that ability to actually be engaged as a group is more important than each individual element.
Yeah. And I think it's that piece where an individual who is engaged, who has all the right things to do their job, they get good recognition, all those indicators of an engaged individual. If they're in a team that doesn't communicate well, that isn't aligned, if that team experience is frustrating around them, they won't stay engaged.
Yep.
Whereas the opposite is true. If you're in a high performing team that has high trust, communicates well, is pulling together in the same direction, and an individual who's not engaged comes into that, they become engaged in their work because of that team. It's that pressure of being in a community together. Sorry, we just had something fall down.
Oh, fine.
It's all good. So that's why we focus on, if you can engage the team first, the employees will follow. So
it's contagious. Or the flip side of that is it expels the people who aren't a fit. And that's actually a good thing, right? Yeah. If you've got an engaged individual and then an engaged team and they're not getting in there and it's not the right fit, then it shouldn't be the right fit, right? Yeah. At a point, you have to call that.
So I guess it flows sort of naturally then to say, well, how then do we engage our teams? And obviously that's what we've been talking about across this whole series in these interviews. So maybe if you want to take us through maybe some of the key things you see. You mentioned before about alignment over autonomy.
Yep.
How do we approach engaging teams to work together and to win?
Yeah, and I can see there's a question here about challenges for maintaining engagement and as you scale.
Yeah,
that's a really interesting part of this as well. So I would say the first step you've got to do is change the mindset of these teams to accept that change is a constant, right? That's a really difficult thing, and people have different appetites to change. But if you are going to be a scaling organization and you're going to have, you want to stay with the market, whatever that is, you want to improve, you want to grow, you do have to accept change as kind of a part of your culture. What happens today is not what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think the biggest thing you can do to make that work for you is to have the teams engaged in positive momentum in that change. Instead of sort of trying to pull everyone along all the time, have them pull you, right? It's like, cool, this is what we did yesterday and that was effective for a time. Now we have to try this other thing because it's, what's in front of us is now different as well.
So how do you do that?
Yeah,
that sounds great, but how do you get them to pull you along?
Well, look, I mean, that's largely what the Teamgage process itself was actually aligned on, right? The whole purpose was, as a group, we need to have good information as a starting point. So what do we need to measure to know where we are and what needs to change? And then what is our process of assessing whether, the changes that we make are working or not? So coming up with those first steps, next action, very agile. We don't want to be spending a lot of money. We don't want to take a lot of risk. So let's do something small. Let's, we talk about measured action over analysis as well. So you can get really paralyzed by excessive amounts of data. I think there's a stat where it's only like 3% of data that an organization collects is actually used. Okay. And it's an insane stat of how tiny the data is. So you can get paralyzed by it. You've got these, petabytes of data and you're not really sure what to do about it, as opposed to actually doing a simpler form of measured experimentation. All right, we see a problem here. what if we tried this,
Mm.
right? And what's the simplest way we can try that? I don't want to architect something that's going to take 12 months to build.
Yeah.
What can we try in 20 minutes to just test this assumption? And then start iterating on that. So I think that's a part of it. But if you can get the culture of the teams within the organization to be that of how can we make it better instead of that's the way it's always been. That's sort of the two types of cultures. I think that's really what we focus on. And to your question of alignment and autonomy, again, it's over, right? So autonomy is important. We're not saying it's not. But I think, and some of you may have seen the interview I did with Jean-Michel recently, and we were talking about, that you're properly aligned when you separate as a group, and the things that everyone individually will do autonomously is well aligned with the goal of the group.
Yeah.
And that's the measure of success, right? It doesn't make sense for someone in a customer experience team to be the one making a call on what our marketing is going to look like. But it does make sense for them to be able to make calls about how to fix a customer's problem on the spot. And they can do that best when the whole group is aligned on what is their purpose, right? Our purpose is to make sure the customer experience is excellent and friction-free. Okay, cool. I can work within those parameters and I understand that. But go on.
Well, I just have a question on that, because I know if there are team leaders listening today, every employee wants autonomy. Like nobody wants to be micromanaged. And we want to have, especially this has probably become a bigger talking point around remote work or flexible work environments. We want to have flexibility. We want to have some control over what we do. And that is actually a really big part of an engaged employee. So there's a strong nuance here. It's not that you can't have autonomy. So just let's make sure we've made that really clear, that nuance around if you're a team leader and everyone's saying, I want more control, I want more ownership over what I do. And you're saying, well, actually we need more alignment over autonomy. How do they navigate that?
So this is not a license to micromanage your people. Let me say that from the outset, because that's not going to go well. Really, the idea of being aligned is that you hear this saying all the time, like hire great people and get out of their way. And I think what's happened is that was a response to a specific era where things were pretty tightly controlled. But as a new manager, you don't have that context. Sometimes that can sound like, if I get involved in any detail, I'm micromanaging and therefore I'm doing a bad job. When in reality, a balance is required. To do something worthwhile, you need to be aligned not only on the why, but you do need to be aligned on the how as well. And there's lots of examples of this, but the one we spoke about with Jean-Michel was really about like, well, if the goal and the why is to sail across the ocean to the west coast of the US, it's like, great. So I'll see you guys at the dock when we're ready to go. This will be excellent. I'm not going to micromanage you, so see you later. And of course, everyone's got different ideas of what that meant. Someone thought it was a luxury yacht. Someone thought they were rowing the whole way. Like just the how of that implementation is too important to leave to individuals. So you must align on the how of that as well, so that when people bring supplies, because that's their role, it makes sense for the vessel that you're taking. When people are putting the schedule together, that also makes sense because of where we're visiting on the way or what our destination is going to entail. What time of year are we going? These are all hows, but they're actually critically important to getting the why executed. So I think that's kind of the nuance, I suppose, if I can put it that way.
I might just add as well, because I can't help myself, to that question about as you scale and grow, how do you maintain team engagement? And I think, well, we use Teamgage every week in our company, and that certainly makes it so much easier for us as the leaders, having that tool in place. But I guess the philosophy of that, if you didn't have Teamgage, the philosophy of really open, like, communication about what it is we're focused on, what we're here to do, making sure it's in line with our values, and then constantly checking in with your teams. So we do it every week, right? How has this week been? What's been a blockage for you? What's been frustrating for you? What's worked well? And by just doing that check-in every week, and obviously like actually actioning things. So, if people are like, look, communication was chaotic this week, and, we went in different directions, and that caused a heap of rework or a frustration for a customer. So we go, great, why was communication off this week, and what can we do differently next week? And we do that every week. And I think that really open communication with your team, checking in with them, and then actually putting actions in place is certainly been our philosophy and approach to keeping everyone engaged as we grow. Even if we can't be in every team all the time, we know that across the teams, this check-in is happening every week with their leader.
Yeah, and make them tangible changes too. I think a lot of people get caught up in very philosophical or abstract discussions, but most teams are blocked by very operational, concrete issues, right? Even if it's around communication, you work on the problems that they can grab hold of and actually work on together.
Yeah.
Whether it's, a customer process that's not going right or whatever.
I've just realized we've already hit time, and I'm so sorry. We had quite a bit more to get through, but that's just us. We're so passionate when we talk about this. So apologies for going a minute over. Thank you all for listening in. We have a feedback survey in the chat, and you'll get it emailed as well. We love your feedback. You heard us just say that. It's our philosophy, right? So let us know what you thought of the session. And we'll also be recording this runner part 2. That's great feedback. There you go. They were happy to listen to us. Thank you. This recording will be on YouTube. We'll share that on LinkedIn and via email, so you can listen to us again. Look, thanks so much for listening. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having
me.
We
didn't bicker, so the team will be proud of us. And really quickly, this is actually our last for season 1. So thank you for those that have been joining each fortnight. So stay tuned on email and LinkedIn. We'll be pushing out when the next series will be starting, the next season. So we'll have a few weeks off. Keep talking to your teams, keep having those authentic conversations and being brave as a leader. And we'll see you later in the year.
Bye, Ron.
Bye.